Na'eem Jeenah is a senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection. Na'eem, good afternoon to you. So, as I understand it, the resolution seems to say Israel has accepted the deal. Hamas approves of the resolution. Is this now really going to happen? Could we finally, after everything, have some kind of ceasefire in Gaza?
We hope so, but I think that this whole process has been a lot of smoke and mirrors. You might remember last week, Joe Biden announced a ceasefire deal, which he said comes from Israel, and the Israelis basically rejected it thereafter. Yesterday, the US presented a very badly drafted kind of hodgepodge of things in a resolution, claiming again that it comes from Israel. Except that the Israeli representative at the UN, when she spoke afterwards, basically rejected it and said that, despite the resolution calling for ceasefire, she said that Israel will continue its actions to find the terrorists, etc. And so she rejected what was supposedly an Israeli resolution, while Hamas, within literally minutes of the resolution being adopted, issued a statement saying that they accepted it. Even up to now, Israel is not clear whether it's not clear to us whether Israel has accepted it or not. Again, even though it's supposedly Israel's resolution. And Blinken, just a couple of hours ago, spoke in Amman, where he said that the ball is now in Hamas's court. Everyone has agreed and we're waiting for Hamas, except that Hamas made the statement clear last night. So there's a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors and subterfuge going on here. And I think part of the reason for that, Stephen, is that, number one, the Israelis expected that the resolution is going to be vetoed by Russia. Russia had made noises beforehand that it wasn't happy, that it wanted a resolution that called for an unconditional and permanent ceasefire. And so the Israelis expected that Russia would veto it, and that would be the end of that. They would come out looking like they wanted peace, but it was vetoed. They also expected that Hamas would either reject it or take a very long time to respond. That also didn't happen. And so you now have a situation where Israel and the Israeli government in particular are in a bit of a tough spot, where their biggest ally and protector, the US, put forward the resolution, supposedly in their name, and they now have to abide by it or not. And it's clear where the world opinion lies on this issue from all of the statements and reactions since last night.
I mean, there's certain factors in this certain assumptions we can make. And the one is that Israel has the military power in the region. It has the ability to mount an offensive in Gaza. That doesn't mean, as we know, Hamas cannot attack Israel, but the sort of main action is Israel's military offensive in Gaza. So it really boils down to whether Netanyahu and his government would accept it. And I presume if he accepted it, there'll be very real political consequences for him.
Yes, if he accepted it, it's quite likely that his government will fall. I mean, it seems that his government is going to fall anyway. It's a matter of time. But if he accepts the deal now, his government will fall. The extreme right will pull out. And even if one party pulls out, he loses his majority. And so that's the end of the government. If he doesn't accept it, the feeling now on the streets, and we're clear that the Israeli streets are not really too concerned about Palestinian lives. What they're concerned about is the Israeli captives who are there. And if you remember, 2 days ago, the attempt to rescue captives, 4 were rescued, 3 of the captives were killed, and 270 or 290 Palestinians were killed as well. So from the perspective of the Israeli street, here's a possibility now to get the captives back. It's at the Security Council. It's been adopted almost unanimously with no vetoes. And Netanyahu and his government needs to act on that and bring the hostages back. So I think that pressure is now going to gather. And Netanyahu is between a rock and a hard place, as they say. Either he remains stubborn and hard-headed as he has been and continues the operation in Gaza, and the mounting opposition on the street and within the Knesset. I mean, we saw Gantz resigning, etc. Um, or he buckles and says, "Yes, that was our resolution. It's a great thing, and we want peace for our people. We want the hostages to be returned, and we will cease fire." And then his government collapses. So he is in a difficult spot personally. And of course, if his government collapses, there's a good chance that before the end of the year he'll be going to jail for all the corruption charges.
And Hamas, as you say, they've indicated publicly very quickly that they would accept it. Presumably, they would then, part of the terms would be to hand over the hostages that they're keeping in Gaza. Presumably, that would happen.
Yes. I mean, they are keen for a prisoner exchange, which is what the deal would be. And I mean, part of the reason they're keen is that the resources that they require in order to protect the captives is an enormous amount. And they're clearly not able to protect the captives from Israeli bombardment. So, handing over living captives in exchange for Palestinian prisoners would be a great thing for them. Will win them good support among Palestinians, etc. So they are keen for that, as well as, of course, the ceasefire. I mean, the past week or so has been extremely difficult for the population in Gaza. It's been so for 8 months, but particularly the past couple of weeks, and they want to see an end to that. So from their perspective, it seems that it'll be a win. And despite the fact that in the first phase, according to that resolution and according to what Biden said on Friday, the first phase would not be a permanent ceasefire or a permanent withdrawal of Israeli forces. It would be a temporary ceasefire for 6 weeks, leading to the second stage, which then could be a permanent ceasefire. Despite that, they've always maintained that they will not accept a deal that is not a permanent ceasefire. Despite that, they said last night they will accept it. Spokespersons since then have confirmed that they have accepted it, and they're waiting for the response.
Within all of this, the other big factor in this is the the U.S. relationship with Israel. Is there any indication that that has changed in a way in which the U.S. would, I'll put this in inverted commas, force Israel to stop its offensive in Gaza or force it to accept a ceasefire agreement? For a very long time, Israel has seemed to appear to defy the U.S. President Joe Biden. Has anything shifted from what we can see with this UN resolution?
Well, I think the one indicator is the fact that they took the resolution to the Security Council. Biden could have left it with his speech last week and the document that came after that, and then say, this side or that side is not accepting it. But taking it to the Security Council means that that they're willing to follow through, and the U.S. ambassador said that it's now the duty of the United States to ensure that Israel accepts and abides by it, and is the duty of Qatar and Egypt to ensure that Hamas abides by it. We assume that means that the U.S. is prepared now to put pressure on Israel to accept it. There's a chance that they also, it seems that they are also working behind the scenes with certain other politicians like Benny Gantz and others, in order to, if Netanyahu doesn't accept it, in order to somehow force him out. But the U.S. has been indicating that they will put pressure for months now and have not been doing so. So we wait and see. But I think that this is the closest they've gotten to showing us that they're ready to do it.
And Russia's abstention, they abstained last night. Does that matter at all in all of this? Is that significant? I mean, they might have abstained just because they don't like the United States, but does it matter?
No, not in the bigger scheme of things. And I think it was, a move well played by Russia, because I'm pretty sure that the Russians knew by the time the vote took place that there was the expectation that they would veto it, and so they didn't. They abstained kind of on a matter of principle. They have, for months since the first time this came to the Security Council, been saying that they will only accept a permanent and unconditional ceasefire. And so they kind of stood by that principle. But this was a game of poker in a sense, and the Russians didn't blink; they bluffed.
Na'eem Jeenah, thank you. Senior researcher at the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflections. So much to this. A lot more to come. Stay